All right, welcome back to another Wednesday live stream with Right Response Ministries. I am joined by Wesley Todd and Michael Belch, and I am your host, Pastor Joel Webben. We are going to be discussing the recent presidential debate that took place last night. I had the great misfortune of watching the debate. Did you watch it,
Yes.
both of you guys?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so we are prepared. We've done our homework. We've kind of prepared a little bit and talking offline for our commentary that we're going to provide today. I'm going to go ahead and just jump in, but before I do, real quick, do us a favor. If you are watching, go ahead and give us a thumbs up on the video. Feel free to comment and say hi or hello or I hate you guys or you're bigots or whatever. It all works for the algorithm. So if this is your chance, if you want to help extend the reach of our ministry for the kingdom of Jesus Christ by calling me a bigot, I will gladly receive.
Endure suffering as a good soldier of Christ Jesus.
So go ahead. So trolls, you're doing good work for the Lord. Doing the Lord's work. So just keep on trolling, and that'll get the video out to as many as possible. But help us out, give us a thumbs up, and we'll go ahead and get started. So this is kind of a 30,000 foot view real quick that I'm going to launch. It's something that we haven't talked about, so I'm going to get your hot take, Michael and Wes. So this is one of my thoughts. The moderators, I don't just think that it's different, these guys are different and they work for a different company, with ABC or whatever. I'm thinking about the two debates that we had back in June with Trump and Biden, and now, with Trump and Kamala. And I was thinking, I was shocked, not last night, right? Last night was like, oh, there they are. There's the legacy media, right? So Trump is debating three people. He's debating, the one person he's supposed to debate, Kamala Harris. And he's also debating, of course, the two moderators who are 100% on her side. I mean, it was laughable, but not, as I said, not surprising. What was surprising was back in June when there was fair and unbiased, like truly unbiased moderating between Biden and Trump.
Right.
That was what was shocking. We haven't seen that in years.
Yep.
Certainly not with Trump, as long as he's been on the political stage. And so I was thinking about that a little bit today. And this was my main thought, and I want to hear you guys, your takeaway. My thought was that it's not that, they finally did the right thing by being unbiased in June, and now we're back to... I really feel like it's rigged. And what I mean is I think that the reason the moderator was unbiased and impartial back in June with Biden is because that was the plan.
Correct.
The plan
that is correct.
Was to not prop up Biden so that he would, they knew all along.
Yep.
No, they were not deceived. It's not that, the politicians pulled the wool over their eyes and the legacy media had no idea. Biden has been on full-on decline. You saw it even back in the 2020 primaries.
Yep. Right.
But he has been on major cognitive decline with almost full onset dementia for 18 months. That's the report now that people are being truthful about it, and that's what everybody has come out and said. Yeah, we knew. And so my point is, I think that the legacy media knew. Of course they knew, and so what we were witnessing is like, wow, like the legacy media is actually doing their job and being unbiased and just moderating the debate and not helping Biden. No, I think once again the legacy media was being the legacy media, aka, as Warren McIntyre would say, the total state. We have authoritarianism and even worse than that, tyranny. It's just not one tyrant. It's the total state. It's your doctor. It's the realm of medicine. It's the media. It's academia. It's Harvard and Princeton and Hollywood, and it's the whole thing is one big tyrant. And so I think that the media was absolutely in on it all the way back in June. And the reason why they were unbiased was because of their bias. And what was their bias? It wasn't a bias towards Biden. It was a bias towards the deep state Democrat Party, knowing that Biden will not be able to beat Trump. He was lower in the polls. Trump was beating in the polls for months, handedly, Joe Biden.
Yep.
And so they knew we've got to replace Biden. We've got to have somebody else come in. So how do we replace Biden? Well, we just we come in and sabotage him. No, you don't have to do that with Democrats. All you have to do with Democrats is not sabotage them, but simply not prop them up. Because Democrats sabotage themselves.
That's right.
right? They're either have dementia, like an actual cognitive ailment, or they don't have dementia like Kamala, and then and then it's even sadder because it's like what's her excuse, and so they're just wicked cackling hyenas, but those are your options. It's either stupid for actual physical reasons, mental reasons, or stupid just because sin makes you stupid. The Proverbs is filled with the correlation between that which is immoral and that which is unintelligent, right? It is the wicked man who is also the fool. And so, but either way, you get a fool. Whether you get a fool by dementia or whether you get a fool by just sheer sinister wickedness. In either case, and so what the media does is, I don't think that the legacy media for a second, developed some sense of ethics and thought we'll be moral and unbiased. I think no, they were just being who they always are, and they knew that Biden in the polls was getting trounced by Trump for at least 2, arguably 3 months. By, in some cases, at some moments, by more than double digits. And so they didn't sabotage Biden. They simply chose to pull back and let him, it's kind of like what David did to Uriah, right?
Right.
Like, go ahead and, once he's out on the front lines, so let's get him on the front lines and let's move the debate earlier so we have time. I think this was all the plan. And now with Kamala, because the plan really is Kamala, and we finally know that now, because she really is the plan, then they came back and did exactly what they've always done. They, it was a 1-on-3, debate between, the moderators helping Kamala. That's my, one of my, we'll get into more, but that's one of my big picture, 30,000 foot view takeaways. What do you think?
I'm hesitant to believe conspiracy theories, like a true, gathered up in the top room, carefully laying things out. I prefer to believe in incompetence. But I think that aligns with, you could align that it doesn't have to necessarily be planned. But think about you watching a train wreck. You don't run in there like, oh, maybe I'll hold back the train or something. But imagine your toddler somehow put the car into drive and it's slowly going into the driveway. You're knocking on the window, put it back in neutral, whatever it is. There's a difference between something you could maybe affect a difference in and a tragedy just unfolding. And that's what was happening in June, in May, even further than that, to the Biden campaign. It was just a tragedy unfolding. Nobody had a plan. And so going into it, there was no maybe we can prep ahead of time with questions and really throw these fact checks out there. It was just kind of he's coming out. Oh my goodness, this is going terrible. There's not much we can do. But the narrative right now is trying to make it believable. Make it believable that the majority of Americans, they want Kamala Harris. They're in her corner. And then on election night, it's taken a while to count up. Oh man, these select city centers like we saw in 2020, man, they're taking a while to get all the ballots in. As long as it's believable and people can't, no, hang on. We saw the support, the difference from this year to last year, from this election to the next. As long as it's believable, and so last night, exactly like you said, hey, we got to throw our boxing gloves in the ring. We got to try to make this believable for her. In June, there wasn't really any hope. It was, he's going to go out there. We'll see what happens to him. But exactly to your point, now there's a fighting chance. That's my take on it. A non-conspiratorial,
I would disagree with you on one thing, Joel. You said the moderators were on Kamala's side.
Yes.
I think it's opposite. Kamala was on the side of the deep state. And I think when Joe Biden would not drop out, all of a sudden he was no longer on the side of the total state.
I see.
And so, Wes, I'm not saying it's a conspiracy, but I do believe with Aaron McIntyre about the idea of the total state. And there is a momentum. There are levers that they can pull. There are pressures and narratives that they can drive. And it was clear, I think, that Biden was supposed to do the honorable thing as the wise old statesman and drop out. And when he would not do that, when they discovered, he's actually a bitter, angry old man with dementia, and he's not going to drop out, he's not going to comply, he was no longer on the side of the total state. And so Kamala is on the side of the total state. So, here, we're back to supporting you. We're back to pretending like the moderator's on your side, like it's all about you. It's not about her. It's not even about Biden. Right. It is about, and to some degree, I don't know what is the deep state, what is the total state, how much of it is spiritual, how much is cultural, how much is just a lack of education among the public, so we're easily manipulated and controlled. But there's something behind the left that's pushing it forward. Not perfectly. They're not these masterminds that sometimes we think they are. But They have a lot of power, and they are willing to do things that I guess honest citizens aren't always willing to do.
Right.
I like
Right.
Michael's theory even more than mine.
Yeah.
That was good.
No, that's good. Yeah, and I guess you can call it a conspiracy. I would call it a coup.
Yeah.
I mean, think about this for a second.
But it's not. I don't think it's a
sitting
coup.
well,
Because a coup is a minority taking over.
Well, that's yeah, you're right. It's the majority.
Yeah.
Taking over. You're right. Because once they decided we're done with you, Biden, and he resisted,
Yep.
then all of a sudden he's outside of the majority. He
Yep.
becomes the minority. So I agree with you in that sense. But what I mean by a coup, the way I'm saying is beyond just the debate back in June. I'm saying like think about this: a sitting president of the United States resigned on social media
Right.
with a letter.
That the
Or
staffers hadn't even
dropped
seen.
out.
The staffers hadn't even seen. All of a sudden, they're packing up,
Yeah.
bewildered, And so, like, as far as we know, Biden didn't even write it.
Yeah.
We didn't hear from Biden until I think it was 6 days later.
Mm-hmm.
No one saw him.
Yep.
Right? He's sick. Remember the tweet that came out, "I'm sick."
Yep.
Which is a ridiculous
That's
tweet.
right.
Like not even saying he wasn't sick. I mean, he's been sick the last 4 years. But I'm not saying it's ridiculous because it's unbelievable. I mean, the guy is like 170 years old. He's sick all the time. But what I'm saying is like to just 2 words like that.
Yep.
I think one of the members in our church. I thought he was pretty insightful with his take. He said it seemed like that was kind of the test. Is we're going to have a staffer put out, not Biden, but somebody else put out a ridiculous tweet and see how it's received. And then after the test, all right, now we're going to go for the real deal. Here's his letter of resignation.
Right.
And he can't say a word about it. We won't let him get behind a camera. We won't let him see the public. Here's a letter with his signature that easily, as far as we know, could have been forged, and it just appears on social media.
Yep.
His whole staff is clueless. They're all finding out for the first time, right alongside you and I, as citizens. And then 6 days later, once he's kicked and screamed probably for the last 6 days in isolation, quietly, and they finally have gotten him to comply and shown him, we will ruin your life. Hunter Biden will be in jail.
Yeah.
Until he's dead. I guarantee that conversation happened.
Yep.
Like they went to a mom and a dad, Joe and his wife, and said, your son's guilty. We know he's guilty.
He's pled guilty now.
We have found 17 other bags of cocaine, in the White House since then that that we've hid away, but we have them, and they all have Hunter Biden's fingerprints on them. You know that your son is a deadbeat. He's a druggie. He's a cokehead. He's whatever. And so you will be financially ruined. You will be legally ruined. Your son will be in jail. And it took 6 days. This is my take. 6 days to get him to realize that he had no recourse, that he had no hope. And then now you're allowed to be behind a camera.
Yep.
Now that you're prepared to go with it. So anyway, so that's and I think the debate was part of that. So
I agree.
In that sense, I mean a coup. But you are absolutely right in your assessment that it wasn't a small minority taking over the majority, but rather it was the majority. In lockstep, as they always have been, the deep state, the total state. And then one guy, and one family, the Biden family, breaks from the deep state and their agenda and their plan because of his cognitive decline. He can't do the job anymore. They want to get rid of him. He doesn't want to be gotten rid of. He puts up a little bit of a fight. They quarantine him. Don't let him see a camera. Don't let him see the light of day for 6 days until they've made every threat possibly imaginable and broken his will to where he has no choice but to comply. And I think the debate in June was part of that. So all that being said, back to last night's debate, which is our topic at hand. Last night's debate to me was, that's my America.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's my country. There we are. The legacy media, the deep state in lockstep, Democrats, working together. And Donald Trump, the worst person to ever be born of women, all, by himself.
Right.
And that said, I don't think he did terrible. Some guys are giving him I think he did a pretty good job. But I do think that he was overly defensive, and I'm sympathetic because he's literally debating 3 people instead of 1, and they're literally, the moderators are literally in real time fact checking Trump, and at times their fact checks are false,
incorrect,
and then with Harris, there's no fact checks, and she is just trotting out all the usual tropes and all that have already been debunked, even by Democrat left-wing
Snopes.
by Snopes, like the very fine people thing. And then Trump is like, oh, he's being defensive. Yeah, but he's also being lied to in front of the American people and so in that sense, I'm sympathetic. The one in my opinion blunder of Trump. A lot of them I am sympathetic. It's like, you've got to defend yourself. If they're saying President Trump is the moderators. It was basically like this. Like one of them, looks at Trump and says, "President Trump, when did you stop beating your wife?" And he's like, "Well, I never did beat my wife." And they're like, "That's enough time." And then the other moderator goes to Kamala, "When do you think he stopped beating his wife?" And so with that kind of setup, of course, you have to defend. And so Trump was constantly on the ropes the whole night, where he needed to be offensive. He needed to be and saying, "Look, you've ruined the country." His closing statement should have been his opening statement. He should have started with that from the beginning. But all that to say, I am sympathetic. I understand when the whole world's against you, you have to make some defenses. But the one defense that I think was absolutely unnecessary was when Kamala, and I despise her, but you got to give honor where honor is due. She was strategic in going after his rallies. Your rallies are boring. People leave them early because they're so bored.
She's going after his ego, not after the rallies.
Exactly. So that's different than you called Nazis very fine people, and you didn't, and you didn't. You got to say that. You got to defend. But with your rallies are boring. He got to this after like 3 minutes, but it should have just been. People leave my rallies, and the only reason they don't leave yours is because they never show up in the first place. All right, next question. That should have been it.
People leave my rallies because at my rallies I'm getting shot at.
Right. Yeah. People leave my rallies because
in the stands.
Right. Exactly. Because there are assassinations attempts, and nobody leaves your rally because you can't leave something that you never arrived at in the first place. Next question. So that one, and that really did seem to unsettle him from that point on. And I think that was a mistake. At the same time, I don't want to overly beat him up.
It's really hard in the public square too for a man to debate a woman. Because most male-female relationships, so a husband to his wife, or a pastor to the women parishioners, or a magistrate even, they're relationships of head and, I wouldn't say like inferior in status or ontology, but just a lower role, a subordinate role. So typically there's a pattern there, and then if the husband at the final end, if a husband and wife are back and forth, the husband biblically has the final say and says, "I've heard your points, however, this is what you're doing." But when you put a man and a woman on stage, and then they're considered peers, and they're supposed to be debating, it's very hard to have a win condition. Because if you win too much or you go too hard, you're really seen as calloused and cruel. Because we all have eyes, and we know that women are, as Peter says, the weaker vessel. You should not be crushing a woman's spirit, even in debate, the way you would crush a male opponent, or Paul talks about rebuking sharply those who are unsound in the faith. So already, by standing up on stage, not against another man who can take the jabs and the blows and the back and forth, but standing up against a woman where he has to walk that tightrope of not coming across too domineering and strong, because the optics of it will be, man, look at this cruel, misogynistic, this, that, or the other man. Look how hard he was. Look at the things he said of her. You can't go in that way. Then you have to go hard enough to actually have a message, to have a position. That was already a tough tightrope to walk, and that is the direct result of feminism. Men and women should not be competing like that, especially on a stage with so many implications. The leader of the free world, and we're gonna entertain the idea that a woman.
And a huge part of that is commander in chief. You are commanding generals and armies and navies.
Commanding.
You are
commanding.
You are exercising authority and instruction and commanding soldiers for warfare. That is simply not the role.
We're going to entertain the idea she could show up to Putin and make demands. That's That's funny.
Right.
It's a joke.
And Putin, God bless him, he would laugh. He would recognize that it's funny
because he's a man,
and he would laugh because Russia still has men.
Yes.
But all that being said. And it's worth mentioning just in passing real quick that I believe it's Isaiah that says that, that one of God's judgments and curses on a nation for unfaithfulness is that they would be ruled by children and women. So it is, that's just one more sign of it's not that like if we get Kamala, then we're going to be, have sinful policies and then we'll be judged by God. No, Kamala, that's true, but it's not just that Kamala will invoke judgment by wicked policies. Kamala is the judgment because of all the wickedness that we've already accrued. We have been a wicked, rebellious, apostate nation for decades and decades and decades. Kamala is not the sin that will result in judgment. Kamala is the judgment that is the result for all of our past sins. The judgment is being ruled by women. And well, why is that a judgment? One, because the Bible said so. That's why.
Amen.
And two, because women are not fit for that role.
Right.
That's just simply not. That's not the role to be. She kept saying that the irony was so thick. Saying like, I've talked to world leaders and everyone is mocking you. They think that you're a joke. I can guarantee you that most of the world leaders on the world stage, outside of maybe other gay nations,
I was about to say that's not a gay man like France.
Right.
So exactly. So there's gay nations like America and France, but outside of the gay nations, nations that are still believe things like natural law and God's created order, they don't think that Trump is an embarrassment. In fact, they're afraid of Trump.
That's right.
He carries a big stick, and that's why we had peace for 4 years. I mean, for 4 years there were no wars. He's right about that. But what they would mock and say is an embarrassment is arguably a superpower, not quite as super as we once were, but a superpower, maybe not but a superpower on the world stage, having a female commander-in-chief. That is something that most world leaders will actually mock and make fun of.
Yeah.
Maybe not to her face, because if anything, they're going to encourage it. Like, please.
Yep.
Yeah, I think Russia came out.
That's why
I don't know if it was a joke.
I think it was an epic troll, but
Putin is a troll, right? But I think there's some truth in it. Putin, I think he's trolling and laughing, but that only actually makes my point even more.
Yep.
But he's saying, Russia's, we endorse Kamala. Of course we do. Like, we endorse the weakest candidate that we could possibly have for our competitor.
Yep.
Of course we endorse Kamala. Like, we would love for Kamala to be the leader of the free world. As our competitor nation, we would love for them to have a weak leader. So let's go to our first commercial break, but then I want to come back and let's discuss. We're going to get into some more big picture views, with some of the tweets we're going to share. Michael Foster put out something that was really helpful. Michael Clary put out something. But I do want to get into a couple specific lies.
Yep.
Because just for the record, I'm not saying that Trump had no twisting of the truth whatsoever, although I think he was far more honest. But there were a couple of moments where it was like, but the reason we don't have to do that with Trump is because if he even got the times that he was borderline deceptive, and even the times when he was 100% truthful, all those were already fact-checked.
Right.
The moderators did that for us, right? The deep state has already taken care of that. But nobody fact-checked Kamala, so I think we might as well do it. So we'll get into a few of Kamala's lies. And then we'll get into some more big picture and what does this mean for us as Christians? Where do we go from here? Those kinds of things. And I also have a big white pill Wednesday for you guys. So help me to remember my white pill because we want to leave you guys with. I actually do think there are some really encouraging things that we can take away. So here's our first commercial break. You have heard it said that cash is king. Well, our sponsor, Private Family Banking, wants you to know that cash flow is the key to building wealth. The partners at Private Family Banking are experts at teaching you how to implement a new way of thinking about money. This powerful and innovative approach provides a fail-safe method for redirecting the cash flow you already have into a privatized banking system that you now own and control. This new system places you and your family on the wealth curve for continuously compounding tax-protected gains now and unto future generations. You may also be familiar with the age-old wisdom that the best time to plant a tree for shade was 10 years ago, but the second best time is today. So, start your journey of building your financial legacy right now. The sooner you start, the better. Let a Private Family Banking partner help you put post-mill talk into post-mill action. Contact them today by emailing banking@privatefamilybanking.com. Again, that's banking@privatefamilybanking.com and request a free step-by-step wealth building plan that will be the game changer that you have been looking for. Lastly, a complimentary discovery call can be scheduled by using the link in this episode's show notes.
America is a country that was founded for the purpose of allowing Christians to do their duty before God and not to have their consciences ruled by the doctrines and commandments of men. Reece Fund exists in order to see the 10 Commandments properly applied, not just as a plaque on the wall, but to actually be used in business as though they're commandments from God that we're supposed to obey. Our goal is to find businesses and to buy them and to build them up. We want to find manufacturing businesses and use them to make sure that we can maintain our capacity to do things here. Reece Fund, Christian capital, boldly deployed.
All right, if you are just hopping into the feed and joining us, go ahead and give us a thumbs up for the algorithm to help it get out to as many people as possible. Also, the trolls, you're doing the Lord's work. God bless you. Feel free to say, how much of a bigot you think I am or whatever. As many comments as possible. That also helps the algorithm, gets it out to more people. So you're doing the Lord's work. Thank you for it. Let's go ahead and get into now some of the lies of Kamala. You guys, there's at least two that we want to hit in particular. You guys go for it.
Yep. Go ahead, Michael.
So the one where she said, hemmed and hawed about how all she wants to do is reestablish the conditions of Roe. And then Trump said, well, that means you can do abortions in the 7th, the 8th, and the 9th month. And she did not literally outright say the words, well, that is not the case. But she very heavily implied, I think she may have even said, no state exists that's allowing unrestricted abortion access. And that idea of unrestricted abortion access is really, all of this discussion needs to be taken with the point that our viewers know that we don't want any abortion. Right. So we're not saying abortion later is better than abortion earlier.
Yeah, we don't want. Trump is bragging about being a leader of IVF, and I would say that's a no.
But the idea of unrestricted abortion is, even from a moral mentality, an important phrase, because what it says is there is no point in a pregnancy when that child is a person.
Right.
So even to restrict abortion to the first 2 trimesters, at least is ceding ground to the Christian worldview, which says that is a person at some point. And now we're just arguing about when it's a person. But the idea of unrestricted abortion denies for the entirety of the pregnancy that there is no human there and there's no moral responsibility that we have to it before God. And so when she said that there's no state that allows unrestricted abortion, what she's saying is all the states agree that there's some moral fencing around this practice to some degree. So she's saying abortion's happening, but we still have moral fences around it. But the reality is there are 8 or 9 states that allow, the language has no qualifiers until the child is born that would prohibit in any way an abortion all the way even up till birth.
How many states?
It's 8 or 9. I had the screenshot and I left it on my computer and I brought my phone instead. But it's completely unrestricted.
Restrictions all the way up
completely unrestricted. Yes.
Right. And so Kamala's saying, well, yeah, nobody does that. Yeah, that it's true that less people, right? More people are going to get an abortion. If they're going to do so, they're going to do it earlier. But Trump was not lying. That it is a fact that there are 8 or 9 states that have no restrictions. And then beyond that, Trump went even further and he said, he said that you can even kill the baby in some cases in some states after birth, and that was fact checked by Kamala's debate partners. It's like what is it, Lincoln Douglas, when there's like
Lincoln
2 of them, right? This was like a like Lincoln Douglas. There's 3 of them, but that was fact checked by the moderators, and they just flat out lied. They flat out lied. What Trump said, you can go and verify it, is absolutely true. That the governor in Virginia, before the guy who's there now, who is what, Youngkin?
Youngkin's there now. Yeah,
so before, but before Youngkin, I forget. But the previous governor before Youngkin, it was passed under his watch. He approved of this bill that allowed for if there was a botched abortion. This is what Trump was referring to. Meaning the baby was born alive. The baby's born alive.
I'm sorry, that's a different thing. This was just a woman who wants to have an abortion at the last second, but she's already
So
in
a partial
labor,
birth abortion.
comes out. They couldn't get the abortion in because in Virginia at the time, you had to have 3 doctors sign off on late-term abortions. And so the idea is towards the end, the woman's at the hospital and she's like, actually, I want to abort this. And they can't get a 3rd doctor signature. So the woman delivers the baby. Then can they come back after that and have a conversation?
So in that case, the baby is, and Trump, you can go back and watch the footage. He said, he used some kind of qualifying word like, in this, he said, you put the baby aside and discuss whether or not you want to keep it while the baby's just sitting there. Yeah. And he said, it's practically an execution. Right. He said something like that, either practically or basically. He said it's effectively or practically. It's basically an execution. And so he did not say that they're executing in terms of like, putting a baby on a guillotine. But he's absolutely right. You might as well. You are putting a newborn child off to the side in isolation alone while you talk with this woman. And if she decides that she wants to murder the baby who's already been born alive, perfectly healthy baby, then what do? They don't go and inject it. They don't go and kill it. What they do is they simply abandon it until it eventually just dies. So there was nothing that Trump said that was untrue.
And in fact, if he would have been, he was a little bit underprepared in this area, I think, because Kamala Harris is on record as a senator voting for the bill. It didn't pass. They didn't have the votes for it, but voting for the bill that you mentioned, which is when there's an attempted late-term abortion and the baby doesn't die, that the doctors must let it die on the table. And she voted for that. Yep. And I don't, like, somewhere in his debate prep, someone should have said, if this comes up, you say, what about your vote as a U.S. senator? It's on record.
And then in addition, who's another governor?
Tim Walz in Minnesota.
He should have gone there.
Guy? Who's that guy?
Exactly. So not just the previous governor before Glenn Youngkin in Virginia, but her running mate, Kamala's running mate, Tim Walz. He signed this same bill that allows for a child to be who's been born and is alive and viable and could live to be, if the mother decides, I don't want it, to be tossed aside in isolation, abandoned completely until it eventually dies, which, again, Trump's language was essentially or effectively or basically an execution. So there's nothing that he said there that was untrue. And it's not just, the point is, it's not just that Kamala disagreed with him and said, you're lying. The moderators fact-checked him in real time. 0 fact checks for Kamala, but fact-checked him with a lie, without facts.
What did you say about, did you say 6 of those?
Andrew Isker is from Minnesota, so he's been there. He's now moving to Tennessee. But during his time there, he said under Tim Walz's, I don't even know what you call it, but 6 children were murdered that way. And
birthed children.
Like,
so
like
6 children born alive,
murdered in the state of Minnesota.
Just put aside.
Yep. Which is murder. It's not like, well, we set it aside and nature took. No, that's we would all agree.
Yep,
that is the murder and the execution of innocent life.
Yeah, and so the thing that not just Kamala, who of course is going to lie, right? As she said about the 2020 debates with the primaries, she said it was a debate. It was a debate, right? When she was questioned. So, but you said this thing about Biden that is factually untrue, and she's like, it was a debate. It like, AKA, it's okay to lie.
It's allowed.
She said that. Even Stephen Colbert, I think it was an interview with him. Even he was like you flat out lied here.
Yeah.
You know that. So my point is, you expect her to lie, right? Like that's, because according to her definition of a debate, a debate is a context for lies. So you would expect that. But this was the moderator, and the moderator is fact-checking Trump and saying that he's lying when what he's saying is exactly 100% precisely true. And not only is it true about some governor of some state somewhere, it's true of the governor who is Kamala's running mate.
Yep.
And not just that it's true, it's his position. It has happened 6 times under his watch.
It's incredible, too, because like Van Til and Greg Bonson talk about this. The unbeliever is always suppressing the truth of God. You can think of it like a beach ball that's being held under the water, and they're trying to keep it down, suppressing the truth that they know in their hearts. They know what's right, they know what's wrong, and their conscience will condemn them on the last day. So the unbeliever is suppressing the truth. And you notice how they come to the defense of like, well, no. These partial birth or these full-term abortions aren't happening. And I would say that's because even the unbeliever, as wicked as they are, as unregenerate, and as hard as their hearts are, as committed as they are to suppressing the truth of God and unrighteousness, even they, to some degree, still know that is pretty horrific.
Right.
To leave just a newborn child on a cold operating room to die. Parents that have had kids, and they're like, even as leftists or atheists, they're like, man, that little baby did need me. And that sounds pretty barbaric. So right there, you saw them rushing to her defense. No, it's not happening. This isn't allowed in the United States. Because they know. Because the unbeliever knows right and wrong. And they know how wicked abortion is. They can tell you. They can lie. They can protest. No. We think this is reproductive rights. We think this is women's rights. All of them, deep down in their hearts, they know absolutely that it's wicked. And you could see when it finally got to the level that there was no denying it anymore, they had to just say, like, well, that's not happening and that's not legal because we agree at least that would be barbaric.
I'm more cynical than you, Wes, because I think in the way that they have owned the language, it's abortion, it's not child killing, it's not murder, right? It's only a matter of time, I think, on the trajectory that we're going before post-birth abortion will become an acceptable category to seared consciences. Like I agree with you. We're at the point where that is still repulsive to most people, but just give it time, Wes, and we will stick that cow branding iron on the conscience of America for just a little longer, and then post-birth abortion becomes reproductive rights too.
Right. Okay, so that was one of the lies, and there are several. There's a lot more than two, but there's one more. We're going to address two. Thoroughly. Okay, so there's one more that we want to give a thorough debunking to. And just for the record, all right, here's the disclaimer. The one that we just addressed is the issue of life, the sanctity of life, human beings from the moment of conception, which is fertilization, not implantation, but fertilization from the moment of conception. This is a full image bearer of the living God. And that is, in terms of objective standards, objective morality, God's standard, that is far and away the most important issue, not the second one I'm going to mention. However, from a strategic, not so much moral or ethical standpoint, but from a strategic
civilizational standpoint,
since we have an election to win, and because we have universal suffrage, the 19th Amendment has not yet been repealed, because the 19th Amendment has not been repealed, and we have an election to win. For strategic purposes, not ethical, but strategic purposes, we've got to talk about what hits home for them. And sadly, it's not babies, but it is cats. So let's talk about that. That was, I mean, seriously, if we want to win an election, it's sad, but it's worth saying. And I'm saying this, it's like, Joel, you seem angry. I am furious. Yeah, I seem angry. I am furious that we have millions of women in our country who love their cats more than they love babies. But here we are. So if we want to be strategic and shrewd and play the political game and all those kinds of things, which I'm down for within reason, so long as it's adhering to God's law, then you know what? Killing babies for women in America doesn't seal the deal. But cats do. So let's talk about women's pets.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So the town of Springfield, Ohio, you've all probably now heard of this little town by now. It's a town of about 68,000 people. And over the last couple years, what has happened is that under a temporary protective status, the Biden administration essentially dropped 20,000 immigrants. Actually, no, I'm gonna call them invaders, aliens, not just immigrants. Oh, I'm seeking a better life. Like invaders, dropped 20,000 of these people into the small town of Springfield, Ohio. Now, the way we traffic in stories and memes and experiences and everything like that, things don't really hit home until we see it, right? A picture is worth 1,000 words. And so there's been actually for a while, people have gone back and watched city council recordings, looked at newspaper clippings. The citizens of this town have been struggling for a while. There's been people that have gotten into traffic accidents, children killed by some of these violent invaders that have come in. But what really hit home over the weekend was two pictures, really a picture and a video. The one was a picture of a man, a Haitian, what looked to be a Haitian man, wearing an oversized hoodie and baggy pants, holding a duck that he had just killed and wrung the neck of from a local, what we could assume would be a pond, walking with it home to eat it. So that was one. And then there's another video, and this isn't actually of a invader or anything like that. She was an American citizen, and she's in the driveway in Canton, Ohio, eating the cat of the family. And so the police showed up. This is the body cam footage. Ma'am, what are you doing attempting to eat this family's pet in the driveway?
Right.
So those two stories kind of combined, and the idea came out of like, well, it's Haitian invaders that are eating household pets. And Springfield police, and this is what happened during the debate.
Yep.
So Donald Trump said, look, these people, they're coming in, they're violent, they're destroying these communities, they're eating the cats and the dogs.
Our pets' heads are falling off.
Yeah, our pets' heads are falling off.
Dumb and Dumber made an entrance into the debate. That's literally a line from Jim Carrey.
Yep.
And Trump used it, and I'm here for it. Totally makes sense. Not surprised at all.
The moderator, Mr. President, the moderator came out and said, well, no. Springfield police have came out and said that they haven't heard of any incidents
Right, the
relating
city
to
manager.
that.
The city manager.
City manager. There's been none of this. This has been all debunked. For one, what type of any investigative journalist will go to one person, and that one person, being called by CNN or whoever, just gives you the answer you want?
Nothing to see here.
Yeah, everything sounds to be on the up and up. And so individuals like Vice President nominee J.D. Vance, they got some plaque. Like, oh, you spread this story. You said people were eating these pets. There's none of this going on whatsoever. I'm going to read a post. This is from Michael Foster. Michael Foster is a pastor in Ohio. This is from a pastor friend of his, and it's actually going to be on the screen.
Pastor lives in Springfield, right?
Pastor lives in Springfield. Yep. Let me just pull it up. And it's going to be on the screen if you're watching.
He's been eating cats for decades.
Yeah. It's a common practice there. All right. So he says, for those who have not been following, this is kind of recapping what I just said. 2 local Catholic charities have contracted with the federal government to relocate refugees. This is publicly disputed, but the evidence is overwhelming. At present, 20,000 Haitians now live in a Ohio town of 60,000 residents. The results are predictable, and I can confirm the stories are true. Traffic accidents involving Haitian drivers has skyrocketed, property damage, hit and runs, and more. One kid was killed when a driver slammed into a school bus filled with kids. Petty crime is out of control. Stores are locking down merchandise due to rampant theft. Driving without a license is ubiquitous. The schools are chaotic. The local district has had to spend north of $300,000 on translators. I spoke with a teacher who said there's not nearly enough room in the existing buildings. The real estate market is also crazy. A friend of mine in real estate said that most of the Haitian families have bank cards from somewhere with $20,000 earmarked for buying homes. The market was already tight, but now the prices are soaring. Don't get me started on the hospitals. And yes, the stories about Haitians killing and eating neighborhood cats and ducks from local parks is true. I know situations like this are complicated politically and culturally, but that is what I get most frustrated about is when people kind of call this kind of policy compassionate. There is not an ounce of compassion in this situation for either the immigrants nor the citizens of Springfield. The citizens are being ignored and the immigrants are being manipulated by deep pockets somewhere. It benefits the politically collected elites and business class and nobody else. Daily Wire, they're on the ground as well, and they're reporting like,
So
yeah,
Jack Posobiec.
Yep. They're like,
Yep.
yeah, the families are like, these strange things are happening. There's a young man, his last name is Clark, 11-year-old
Real
boy.
quick, just in the chat, some people were, I noticed somebody said, well, Foster's Church is in Batavia, Ohio. And so just again, for clarification, if you're tuning in right now, this is not Michael Foster's own personal account. This is him
Well, it
relaying.
is the account, but he's
Yeah.
passing on.
This is him passing along an account of one of his friends who is also a pastor and who is not a pastor in Michaelstown, Batavia, but
Right.
who is a pastor in Springfield.
Yep, exactly. So, a man
This
who's
is a
lived
guy
there,
on the ground. He is a local
pastored.
minister in that community.
And other reporters like Daily Wire, Jack Posobiec, they're on the ground. They're reporting the same thing.
Yep.
The citizens are stressed. You saw a woman at city
And
council.
the fact-checking moderators, what they're using as their evidence is no one on the ground.
Right.
But
Yeah.
we
They
have
call the city
one of our
manager.
people made a phone call
Yep.
to a city manager who is probably, if anything, has reason to be defensive and like, no, I haven't let my town go to crap. No, that's not happening. So their evidence is we made a phone call and talked to one person, the city manager. But Michael Foster is saying, I'm friends with the pastor. Here's his eyewitness account of what he's seen happening. And he's on the ground. He lives there. He pastors a church in Springfield. And there are other, like you said, Jack.
Posobiec.
Yep. And then
With Human Events,
Daily Wire.
Daily Wire's also on the ground.
Yep, reporters on
And
the ground.
Connect the dots. The animal sacrifice, eating of it, this is directly connected to witchcraft. Haiti is a demonic
really
place.
bad.
This stuff, we've talked about it before, is on the rise. This was shocking. I saw this last year. There's a trail cam that caught 2 nurses without clothing eating the carcass of a deer.
I saw that.
Like
Yeah.
this stuff is on the rise. Why?
Disgusting.
Because people just wake up and then one day it's like, you know what really sounds good right now? Raw domestic house cat. No, they worship demons, commune with demons, and dumb demon worshippers then go out and do dumb demon worshipping things like kill and eat animals.
Right.
Savages.
Yep.
And then they have no place. The point is, in a town like that, they need to go back to where they came from.
And so there are multiple eyewitness accounts. And for the record, that was another, with the fact checking, it's like, well, that's not true. They're not eating people's pets, and that's a crafty way of like defending and saying,
that's right.
Now we know that they are actually eating ducks by the dozens out of the pond, it's like, a duck fillet, like a Chick-fil-A, but that's not someone's pets. And so I can just sit here on, national television and say, Trump is a liar, fact check,
that's right.
Entirely false. What you said is entirely false. Meanwhile, they're eating ducks. But it's not just that. It's not just a crafty way of a defense. Like you could also say like, well, yeah, and there have been some cats too, but they weren't pets, you see? And so we said, that's a lie. They're not eating. Exactly. They were cats in an alleyway, blah, blah, blah. But the fact of the matter remains, ducks and cats from eyewitnesses, not a phone call to the city manager who has every reason to defend that he's doing a good job in his city and that it hasn't gone to hell in a handbasket. But no, guys on the ground, local pastors who live in the area, have been there for years, and reporters who are not just making a phone call, but get boots on the ground. And the report is, no, it is not just ducks, it's also cats. And could they all be feral cats? Maybe. But the point is, this was not some far-fetched, ridiculous lie. But that's literally, I'm glad because that triggered my memory, that when I said the word ridiculous, that was literally the word that Kamala used as her response. She was like, ridiculous.
Ridiculously true.
Ridiculously true. It is ridiculous, but it's true.
I want to connect this back to what we said earlier, which is the idea of the total state, because Ohio is a state that has gone more red than I think people expected to over the last couple of years. And it's not surprising to me that not only are they sowing chaos and anarchy, but that they're importing massive numbers of Haitians into small towns like this. And I know that the post from Michael Foster's friend said that there's a lot of people driving without licenses, but I also saw videos where a guy went down to the DMV and was asking, and none of the DMV employees would talk to him. So take this as as a second. But he was talking to people renewing their licenses at the DMV, and they said they've seen that these immigrants, quotes, are getting driver's licenses from somewhere. They're not driving like they've passed a driving test. They can't read the street signs. They can't read the driving test. But these eyewitnesses have said, who live in the town, that a lot of these people are being given driver's licenses. Well, if they're being given driver's licenses,
they can vote.
Yep.
They can vote.
I gotta hit one comment. Someone just said, these are just they're Haitians are normal people. This is very racist.
Okay, go up, Nathan, real quick in the chat. Somebody doesn't like our Haitian hate. It's not Haitian hate. It's just stating we love Haitian people and we want to see them come to faith in Jesus Christ.
Joe KNYC, my OMG, Haitians are just regular people. This is so racist.
No, they are not regular people.
No. There are roving cannibal gangs down there right now. We heard
on the island
of Haiti.
Yes,
we heard just a couple months ago a missionary couple. They were on the phone with her. It was a husband and a wife. They were on the phone with her parents, and they were gunned down by the roving gangs there. And it has a long history of voodoo, of witchcraft, of cannibalism, of wickedness. All people, like all cultures, are not. Like we have the U.S. here, and we worship the triune God and value honesty and integrity and freedom and liberty. And then you have Haiti, and they eat people, and both are equal. No, they're not. One is vastly superior. And if you would like to go to Haiti, hit me up, and I'd be happy to buy you a plane ticket, and you can go see how normal they are.
Right.
And for two, calling racist, that word has no power here.
Yeah, you have no power here.
Yep.
Racist, it just doesn't mean anything. No. Sadly, I think that there is such a thing in biblical terms. We did a whole episode on this. There is such a thing as righteous judgment, and there's such a thing as sinful judgment. Matthew chapter 7 is a perfect example. The first 5 verses talk about do not judge, and the whole implication is don't give wrong judgments. right? So there's a wrong judgment that if you judge wrongly, sinfully, you too will be judged. With
Right.
the same measure you judge others, you too will be judged. But then verse 6, Matthew 7:6 says, do not give to dogs what is holy, or to swine, what is holy, or to dogs. Do not give your pearls to swine,
Right.
or
Or
dogs what
what
is
is holy to
holy,
dogs.
lest they trample them and trample you also. Well, how do I know who swine and dogs are? So that I know not to give. You make a judgment.
Yep.
You make a judgment. And by the way, when it's talking about swine and dogs, this is Jesus in a sermon describing a certain type of person,
Yeah.
people made in the image of God, calling them swine, calling them dogs. So there's judgment that's sinful. That's Matthew 7, verses 1 through 5. Don't do it. And then judgment that is permissible, mainly being right judgments. You have to exercise a judgment in order to know who you should withhold holy things and pearls from. That's judgment. Prejudgment, prejudice comes from those two words, prejudgment. So that's judgment. There's sinful forms and righteous forms. Prejudgment, same thing. There's a way to make righteous prejudgments, and there's a way to make sinful prejudgments. But racism, in most 99% of the cases that is used today, it is a made-up fake sin. In the few cases where racism actually is legitimate, it would be a prejudgment that is sinful. Meaning it is solely based on the color of someone's skin, their race, without any other metrics or evidences to support it. Like when the Apostle Paul says, all Cretans are gluttons and liars.
And beasts.
Beasts. Yeah, he calls them beasts.
Dehumanizing.
Just like Jesus called certain people swine and dogs. There's a rich Christian tradition of calling people animals. Not only pointing out that people eat certain kinds of animals, but that they even are animals. So there's a rich tradition. If you want to be in the same camp as Jesus and the Apostle Paul, then get used to it. But when Paul says all Cretans are lazy, gluttons and liars and lazy beasts, when he says that, he's not saying it on a whim. He is quoting, actually, this is a quote. He is quoting a prophet, someone else who said it, and then he confirms and says, and he's right. This is true. And the person who said it, Paul says, was one of their own.
Yep.
It was a Cretan prophet or philosopher of the Cretans who said about his own people. And so Paul is saying, this guy said it about his own people. That's how bad they were. And this guy was right. Yeah. They are that bad. And what would make that a sinful prejudgment is if Paul was prejudging prejudice based off of no exterior factors whatsoever, without any other evidence, without any other metrics, nothing. But that's not the case. Paul is saying this for a reason. Paul knows the Cretan people. Paul has spent time. He's invested. He knows, and so he's making a generalization. Right? Could there be one Cretan who is a decent guy? Yeah, maybe like the philosopher that he's quoting.
Elders. So he's saying they're all
in Crete. This is why I left you in Crete. And they love the Cretan people.
So he knows there's
because
exceptions.
he literally says to Titus, this is why I left you in Crete, to put what remains into order, appointing elders in all the churches. So they planted churches in Crete. He left his beloved son in the faith, Titus, in Crete to put in Cretan pastors as elders. And yet Paul's also saying, and yet we recognize the gospel, right, like a mustard seed that takes time to grow into an all-earth encompassing tree, or like a little leaven that takes time to work through the whole batch of dough, until the gospel grows. For now, because of centuries of a history of demon worship and sin and rebellious practices, Cretans in general are not ethical people. That is a perfectly biblical thing to say. So the Haitians, Haiti in general, are there exceptions? Of course, there are always exceptions.
Joe's mentioning them right there. Like, well, I live around some.
Right, sure. Great. You live around some. And maybe
how long have they been in the U.S.? Have they been?
That would be another question. How long have they been here and been influenced by Western customs, civilization, which is built, for the record, Western civilization was built on biblical principles. So if you are immersed in Western civilization, you are getting at least some immersion into the biblical worldview, because that's what it's all been based on. So if you've been here for 20 years, it's like, well, I met a Haitian and he was a pretty nice guy. Yeah, but has he been immersed into the Christian worldview for the last 20 years of his life? Well, that's why he's a nice guy. So that's another W for the West, not for Haiti.
My wife had a friend she was from Haiti, but she lived here 20 years.
Yeah.
She was normal, went to church and a Christian, because
Probably
She went
a
to church,
wonderful
was normal
person.
and Christian. Yeah.
Exactly. Amen. And so in Haiti, in general, and we have to, the only reason I'm laboring the point, and then we'll go on, we have to break the demonic, egalitarian system that we've all been brainwashed with. Not everyone is equal, right? Everyone is equal in their innate dignity as an image bearer of the living God. So if we're talking about inherent dignity, value, and worth as an image bearer,
Categorical.
yes, we are all equal. But we are not all equally ethical. We are not all equally intelligent. Right? We're not. Right? It's like me and Michael Jordan. We both had equal opportunity to play in the NBA.
That's true.
Bulls, the Bulls, Bull S. No, me and Michael Jordan did not have an equal opportunity to play in the NBA because from birth, he had some giftings that I don't have. And Wes
I've seen him
Wes
in
can
action.
attest to it. Wes, he used to invite me to play basketball with men in the church after the Sunday evening service. So it's Sabbatarian, right? The sun has gone down. We've already done a full Lord's Day. It's it meets the commandment, right? This is not a 4V, a 4C violation. But I stopped getting the invites from Wes.
I tried like 2 or 3 times, and then
he was like, "Nah, Joel. Honestly, Joel has no business."
I saw you trying to teach your son, and I was like, I think I'll just rescind that one.
Yeah, we'll rescind that
Team's
invitation.
full.
He saw me actually. Part of it is he saw me trip on a Sunday. I was carrying my son. It was sad because I was carrying my son, and I was trying to fall and protect him. But like sometimes when you're carrying a kid, you can't see your feet. It's like this huge blind spot. And there was like this massive rock, and I literally just got done baptizing 2 people. I'm biased, but I think I preached a pretty good sermon. I'm on cloud 9. I'm feeling pretty good, like all right. And then in front of half the congregation, I just eat dust, and the Lord is good, and that's how He keeps me humble. I literally, it's not that I had a metaphorical fall. I literally fell on my face in front of the church
with your son.
And then I think that was the straw that broke the camel's back, where Wes said, "You're no longer invited to our basketball games." So, anyways, the point is, not everybody's equal. We're not equally athletic. We're not equally intelligent with IQ. We're not equally ethical. And the same way it works for individuals, it also works for cultures. Not all cultures are equal. The West is better, not different. It's not like, oh, they do things one way and we do it another. We're just different. No, we are different. That's true. And the difference is we're better. We're better. And here's the deal. Here's the reason why. Because the West was shaped by Jesus Christ and the scriptures for 1,500 years since Constantine. And the gospel makes people better. So this is not white supremacy. This is not racism. This is not arrogance or pride. This is me with my faith as a Christian pastor saying, yeah, I think the Bible makes a difference. And if it doesn't, if the Bible shaping a civilization and nations for 1,500 years doesn't make any difference to where that civilization becomes better, then I'm in the wrong business. And I got to find a job and do something else with my time if the Bible doesn't make a difference. So yes, these United States are better than Haiti.
Amen.
And that's why they're here. That's why they're coming. Okay, sorry. There we go.
Real recognizes real.
All right, next break.
All right, next break, and we will come back and give another tweet from Michael Clary that was super insightful, and then we're going to deal with the chat. We want to take some questions for you. So you guys, real quick, as we're going to this commercial break, go ahead and start writing in your questions for us, and we will do our best to respond to as many of them as possible. We usually get to at least half, if not more. And the way to kind of get yours so that we don't skip it is, if you can, in the chat, write question.
Maybe in caps.
Right, yeah, in all caps, question, and then write out your question so we know that it's not just, because you guys, you always have your sidebar conversations as we're talking. You guys are, discussing with one another, and that's great, but make sure that you specify that this is a question. So get your questions in. We'll get to our last commercial. We'll come back, and we'll discuss a tweet by Michael Clary that gets another big picture, 30,000-foot view of the debate between Kamala and Trump, and then we'll go ahead and start addressing your questions.
Are you a Christian struggling to find companies that align with your values and beliefs? Well, then Squirrelly Joe's has you covered for all your coffee needs. All of their coffee is hand-selected and roasted fresh every day by a family of fellow believers. Try them out and you'll savor exceptional coffee while knowing that your investment supports a company committed to following God's teachings and upholding truth and righteousness, ensuring that your hard-earned money contributes to the growth of God's kingdom. Stop giving your hard-earned dollars to pagans who support evil. Right Response listeners have access to an exclusive deal. Your first bag of coffee is free. All you have to do is cover the shipping. So head on over to squirrellyjoes.com/right response. Again, that's squirrellyjoes.com/right response to claim your first free bag of coffee today.
Visit thewordsoap.com today. Again, that's thewordsoap.com. Everyone needs soap, so wash yourself in the Word.
All right. Well, welcome back. You mentioned we're going to read from Michael Clary.
Yep.
Really great insight. He's a pastor in Cincinnati, Ohio. So great guy to follow.
Got some good Ohioans this week.
Right.
Well, I know. Just Ohio is that state where you're like, please,
right.
Lord, don't send me on missions to Ohio. Like, I'll go to Missouri, just please. Not Ohio. But great guys out there. Here's what he said. True political debate is dead. It'll be on the screen as well. The media is largely to blame. For true debate to occur, the participants have to share enough in common to make their differences meaningful and worthy of discussion. But Trump and Harris do not share the same ethical universe. They have zero in common, no shared values. Their worldviews are so radically divergent and incompatible that all either of them could hope for is to score some zingers and gotcha moments that could be clipped on social media. Nothing of substance will be remembered. All the focus will now turn to aesthetics. The handshake, the tone, how they looked, who scored points on the other, how viewers felt watching it. The moderator's questions all assumed leftist framing and priorities. Abortion, climate change, gun control, January 6th, racism. There are leftists who ask questions about leftist priorities. They didn't ask any questions about things that I care about, such as religious freedom, censorship, government corruption, Trump's assassination attempt. It's amazing they didn't even ask about that. The transgender movement, the moral decay of our society, the mental health of the USA's children, population decline, among others. The leftist worldview is the assumed paradigm of the media, which prevented true debate from happening. It's like the rest of us don't even exist, and maybe that's their goal. We were talking a couple of weeks ago at a guys' night about Kamala Harris's acceptance speech, and she uses the terms that are so familiar to us as Americans: justice, freedom, and liberty. And I think every single one of us at this table would agree with our definitions that justice, freedom, and liberty are wonderful, God-given things. Amen to true biblical justice. Amen to freedom and to liberty for you and to your family, for unalienable rights that every human being has. So she's saying the same words, but notice the difference when I talk about justice. I talk about justice that's indifferent to the born and the unborn, equal weights and measures. Freedom. I would like the freedom to not go to my public library and have to step over homeless people with my children. The freedom to start a business. The freedom to not be taxed 40%. The liberty to own a gun. The liberty to worship freely in the public square. So justice, freedom, liberty, yes and amen. How is the left defining justice, freedom, and liberty? Well, it's injustice. It's justice that is contrary to whites. Whites disadvantaged in this way. Whites kicked out of jobs. It's freedom to smoke weed, to be a degenerate, for children to do irreversible surgeries to themselves. I don't know, like the liberty to watch perverse movies. So how do you share a world when we could say the same words, that I could sit across the table from someone that's liberal and I could say, yeah, freedom and liberty are good things we should strive for. And they say, I agree. But we don't even have in the same universe the same meanings of those. I don't know how that conflict gets resolved. I think worse times, more difficult times. Now, hopefully, good times are ahead, just in that we make progress. But it's two nations. It's a group of people that have some shared vision of at least what the USA used to be, a Christian nation, and then a people over here, and there's not overlap. We talk past each other whenever there's any type of dialogue.
Right.
I'm going to take
Well said.
a quote from Steve Deace here, and I may have said this a few weeks ago, so I'll say it quickly, but he said he was reluctant for months and months and months to embrace Aaron McIntyre's framing of positive world, neutral world, and negative world. And he said he was reluctant to embrace it, not because he disagreed with Aaron's arguments, but because...
Aaron
Aaron, I'm sorry. Aaron Wren. Yeah. I get the Aaron and the Aaron mixed up.
I know. Yeah,
Aaron Wren. He was reluctant to embrace that because the implication of living in negative world means it changes the terms of engagement, he said. And that was so helpful to me, because if we live in negative world, which we do, And what you said, Wes, how do we resolve this? Steve Day said, we don't resolve it. We're in a steel cage death match.
That's right.
And only one worldview walks out of that.
Yeah, the way to resolve, right? So it's like, how do we abolish abortion, and how do we ensure the safety of our children, and how, what do we do with this, and how do we even, have the freedom to preach the gospel that our hearers might come to faith in Jesus Christ and be saved and forgiven of their sins. It's actually simple, really hard,
right?
But not complex. It's really simple. You win. You have to win.
Yep.
When we're at war, we are in war. It's like, and for every pietist, oh my gosh, like every pietist on Twitter, I'm looking at you, Reformed Inc. For every pietist on Twitter, saying, well, our battle's not against flesh and blood, but against, like what, and the only reason they're quoting that, this is what they mean by that. What they mean is, I'm tired of seeing guys who are applying Christian theology to the culture war getting more views on YouTube than me, and I'm envious and jealous and effeminate. And I want to remind you guys and bring you back to the good old days, neutral world, when everybody came to our conferences and nobody really cared about politics or those things, and where we could have the 470th conference on the doctrines of grace in a row, and the Reformation. We're still fighting for the Reformation. The Bible says, 1 Timothy, the Apostle Paul says, rebuke your opponents with gentleness, right? So when you do have an opponent, rebuke them with gentleness, but he gives a specific reason why. He says, because you do not know if God might grant them repentance, that they might come to their senses after, and here's the key, after having been taken captive by Satan to do his will. So here's the point, right? Here's a little cross-reference, exegesis, right? So our battle's not against flesh and blood. But then the verse that I just quoted from 1 Timothy, you put those together. This is cross-reference, exegesis, building a biblical doctrine. This is how you do it. Our battle's against not flesh and blood, but principalities. The chief one being Satan. But Satan, guess what he does? According to 1 Timothy and what Paul writes there, Satan takes flesh and blood captive and employs them in his ranks. So we do have to fight with flesh and blood. What Paul is writing in Ephesians, our battle is not with flesh and blood, is he's talking about the origin and the ultimate source of our battle.
Yep.
Paul is not negating the natural world. He's not saying war is just, like the Matrix. Paul's not a hippie, right? He's not saying there is no spoon. Dude, man, there is no, the world is, I'm just a citizen of the world, man. There's no boundaries. God didn't put those in, there's no borders, and there's no wars, and nobody's upset. Like, Paul is not an idiot. He knows that we battle flesh and blood. There are wars with flesh and blood, one tribe against another tribe, one nation against another nation. He knows that, and he knows that even at the spiritual level, with political war and cultural war and spiritual war, that these spiritual entities, Satan being chief among them, negative spiritual entities, demonic ones, that he takes people captive.
Yep.
And so in battling Satan, we have to battle people. We battle it in the realm of the ideas, in the realm of voting, in the civil realm, in the academic realm, in all these different realms. And sadly, because we live in a sin-riddled world, sometimes you have to battle them literally. Now, I'm not advocating for that. We're certainly not advocating for that. But there have been times throughout history, and a time like that could come again. We don't want it, but it could, where there's literal, not a cold civil war, but a civil war that gets hot. Something like that could happen. And then the Christian should be able to sleep at night with a clear conscience, knowing I'm fighting for my wife and children, friends and family, for the members of my church, against people that I don't want to do this, but I have to do this. I'm not a pacifist. I fight what's in front of me because I love what's behind me. I love what I'm protecting. I love who I'm protecting. So there is this kind of war. We can't just be pietist and say, that we just fight in our prayer closets in the 17th dimension. That's just not the way the world works.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I can't even remember how I got onto that.
I mean,
there's a point that I was.
We have to win.
The war is.
We have to win.
Yeah, we have to win.
We have to win. And so that's what negative world means. The positive, the neutral, and the negative is there was a time where it benefited you to be a Christian in the West and in these United States. That was positive world. There was a time where it didn't benefit you, didn't help you, didn't hurt you. That's neutral world, right? And Aaron Renn, he puts that at like 1994
93.
or 1993 all the way up to 2014.
Yep.
But then 2015 and beyond is now not neutral, not positive, but negative world. And so how do you, back to Steve Deace, how do you engage in negative world? Well, in negative world, the way that you engage is with an iron will.
Yep.
The way that you engage is you have to be ruthlessly committed to winning real, tangible, political, cultural, academic, ecclesiastical power. You must seize power. And then with that power, you then wield it righteously. And when power is wielded righteously, it is a blessing to the righteous, and it is even a blessing to the wicked if they choose to turn from their wicked ways. Everybody wins. Everybody wins. The atheist will fare much better under Christian nationalism than if Christians lose. What you'll get, which will not be globo-homo-gay globalism.
Right.
Globo-homo-gay globalism has always ever been a temporary placeholder. It doesn't have staying power. It's not viable. How do you know that a worldview is not viable? Well, any worldview that kills all of its offspring is not long-term viable.
Everyone else.
And sterilizes everybody else is not viable. That dog won't hunt. In other words, what am I saying? Secular humanism will not last. It is merely a placeholder. Secular humanism was the parasite that killed the original host of the West, aka Christianity, Christendom. And once it kills the host, the parasite also dies. Secular humanism will kill itself and is currently killing itself as it kills Christianity. And so then what will replace it? Secular globalism, gay homo? No, it will be nationalism. But if you kill Christianity, it won't be Christian nationalism. It will be Islamic jihad nationalism. And then you tell me, homosexual, how well do you do underneath that nationalism? You tell me, atheist, how well do you do under... I mean, guys have talked about Richard Dawkins, and these guys have come out and said, we gave our lives to killing Christianity. Whoops. We made a mistake. Turns out that at least some rubric of Christianity, if nothing else, just cultural Christianity, it is the defensive immune system. It is the defensive mechanism for the survival of the West. And we have been working to kill it, and is not our utopian dream of atheism. Turns out that isn't viable. Atheism immediately, if it kills Christianity, it immediately gets swallowed up by another viable world religion, which is not secularism, it's not atheism, it'll be something else like Islam. And so you got to win. If you love the righteous, win. If you love God, win. If you love the wicked, win. For everyone. If you're going to engage in negative world, which is where we are today, you must win. Men must be governed. All right, we should take some questions.
All
right, so here's the first one that we got so far. Go ahead and do us a favor. Again, give us a thumbs up. If you're in the chat, if you're listening right now, please give us a thumbs up. Help the algorithm. Help get this out to as many people as possible. And then also, you can help boost the algorithm by writing in your questions. We've got one to start with, and we can spend a little bit of time on this.
Too. You said you wanted to give
us.
us
That's right. So we've got a little bit of time on this first question that buys you some time to type in your other one. So go ahead, Wes, read it.
All right. So Yellow Moth. Response Ministries, what do you think of Kamala telling people to go to Trump rallies? That was a strange play that I can't make heads or tails of.
Bluff. So I'll give my answer super fast. She's saying this to her constituents, to her base. Who is what? Who is her base? Democrats. Democrats, guess what they don't do? Go places. They don't go to her rallies. They sure as hell aren't going to go to a Trump rally. They don't even go to the voting booth. If it wasn't for mail-in ballots, a Democrat couldn't win. So she's talking to people who they use Uber Eats. They don't work. They don't go to a job. They live off the government and our taxes, those who do it. So we're talking about people who don't go to church. They don't go to work. They don't go to the grocery store. They don't go to a restaurant. They won't even go to vote. They'll mail in their ballot and probably mail in a few of their neighbors' ballots while they're at it. And they're not going to go even to a Kamala rally because nobody's there. And so she knows that it's a safe bluff. They're not going to go to a Trump rally. So how do I make heads or tails of it? What I would say is it's a good bluff. It's saying I'm so confident that his rallies are terrible and boring that I dare you to go. And who's she saying this to? People who don't go anywhere. It's a smart bluff.
Yeah.
That's my thought.
I'll take
When
that.
I'm losing to you in chess, sometimes I'll do like a risky gambit and be like, well, I'm kind of down as it is,
already
so I'm
down.
just going to throw something out there. I think that's what a little bit of it was. Like, hey, go to a Trump rally, see how bad it is. Kind of implying, because like you said, nobody's actually going to go, but the idea would be like, ooh, that sounds pretty dark, going to a Trump rally. I bet there's swastikas there. Kind of this idea of like,
And-
these are dark, boring places.
And it's kind of bravado on her part.
Very
too.
fine people are there.
Supposedly.
Yeah, that was another one of the lies.
Yeah.
It was from Kamala. That was
Yeah.
from Kamala.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But they didn't debunk it. So that
They
one's been
didn't debunk
debunked again and
Right.
again.
It's been-
That would have been an
exactly.
opportunity for the moderators to say, no, actually, it was very clear. He was not referring to neo-Nazis
Snopes.
as very fine people.
Debunked it.
But-
and the
But they
moderators won it.
didn't, which
You're
is
right.
which is funny. That,
Yeah.
I would have assumed.
I
You're
was
right.
just going to say her saying that was kind of a false bravado, right?
Yeah,
like
that's
it
what
lets
I
her
thought.
come
That's what I
off as a
thought.
tough guy.
Yeah, it sounds like,
Yep.
oh man, she's not biased. She's even telling us, you go find out how the sausage
Oh,
is
yeah.
made. You go for yourself.
Yeah.
But who are you telling? You're telling a bunch of degenerate, porn addicted potheads who can't get out of bed, right? So it's a pretty safe, safe bluff. And just for the record, like Trump, swastikas or whatever. No. And Trump, like he's going to have a total abortion ban. I wish.
nope.
Yeah.
I wish. No. Like Trump, I don't think Trump has even read the policies of Project 25.
Well, he said he had.
That's what he said last night. Was,
He has
Haven't touched it.
publicly distanced himself. Here's the deal, and here's my point saying that. It's not a defense of Trump. I wish and I pray by God's grace that Trump, supernaturally by God's grace, becomes half the man my enemies think he is.
Yeah.
That's right.
But he's not.
Yeah.
Right? That's why Right Wing Watch will pick up, clips from every video we do, and I'm sure they'll pick up, especially they'll have a field day with the Haiti stuff. But like pick up videos. And why? Because it's an election year.
Yep.
And what are they trying to do? Well, Joel is a Christian nationalist, and so is Trump.
Right.
And so what they're trying to do is win an election. They're a left-wing, propaganda publishing organization. So they take right-wing people, and then they clip them out. They put it for millions of people to see. They've been doing it with me and others for months. And why are they doing it? They're trying to say, essentially what they're trying to say is, if you vote for Trump, this is what you get. Well, let me just settle that right now. If you vote for Trump, you don't get anything close to Joel Webbett. I wish you did, but you don't. Trump is a liberal 1990s Democrat in New York.
Yep. Who's now running for the Republican nomination as president.
That's how far we've slid.
Yep.
If you voting for Trump, you get Bill Clinton.
Yep.
That's what you
Yeah.
get.
But
And maybe to Bill Clinton's left on a couple issues too.
Joel, are you saying the left is trying to win?
Yeah, they're trying to see the left. They
get it.
understand, and that's why they have power. They have power because Christians are pathetic.
I was going to say, just for like the Christians, they're not voting for Trump. I think you should. I think that's wise. But say they're not doing it and they're like, man, you guys seem all in, but this isn't even going to get us started on the path of repentance. 100%.
We know.
Trump wins an electoral landslide November 5th, I think it is.
Yep.
Not even 1% of the work of repentance and
That's
turning back
correct.
to God has been done.
Yep.
But what we do have, if he has an electoral sweep, is time.
That's right.
Kamala
That's all it
kills time. Pastors, Christian leaders, families are going to be locked up. Religious freedom crushed. More babies murdered. So you have less time under that. And with Trump, it's not righteousness.
Right.
He is not our Christian prince, and he won't be. He's an older man. He's not going to change his ways.
He's not going to change.
But we get more time for our leaders, our men, good magistrates, people that we trust, good godly men to be in his administration. That's why we're all
That's
in
exactly
for Trump's election in November.
It buys us time. That's a great point. Buys more time for the nation to repent with gospel preaching and all of us working together as Christians. But it also, I'm glad you brought up the element of the administration.
Yes.
It's not Trump. If you get Kamala, you will not have an evangelical Bible-believing Christian within 50 miles of the White House.
Nope.
Or anywhere. That's what we're talking about. Is yeah, sure, you'll have the Reverend Al Sharpton. So you'll have guys who aren't Christians but have bishop before their name
And inoculate
or
people
reverend.
into thinking that's Christianity.
Yes.
It's very subversive.
Because it'll be public, it'll be on TV.
Right.
That's what Christianity
But
looks
you
like.
will not have one Bible believing, not one Christian who believes that that marriage is between a man and a
That's
woman.
right.
Nope.
Who believes that that from conception a child is made in the image of God and has sanctity and dignity of life. Does Trump hold to the sanctity of life like the lion that we wish he was? No, no. But
And God will judge him for it.
Literally, and God will judge
Yes.
him for it.
Yes.
That's right. But a Dusty Devers abolitionist, if Trump is in the White House, you know what could happen. I can't predict it. I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not a prophet or the son of a prophet. But I'm saying it's absolutely possible, and I think I could see it being more likely than not. I could see Dusty Devers getting an audience at some point during a 4-year administration with Donald Trump.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know who he will not get an audience with ever?
Right.
Kamala Harris. In fact, if anything, Kamala Harris will make sure that a Dusty Devers is in jail,
Right.
or at minimum that that there's some kind of big lobby and push, and that he loses his seat as a state senator in Oklahoma.
And also, yes,
That's what you're voting for.
God can sovereignly work through persecution. Yes, 100%. But we are not welcoming, we are not looking, we are not trying to usher a persecution onto us, onto our nation, onto our political leaders. Like, if God sovereignly brings persecution, the gospel will triumph. But we're not trying to bring it about. We're not trying to assume that if there's persecution, that our civilization will be more prosperous. No.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Persecution is a cause for great weeping. Read Lamentations,
Yep.
read Jeremiah.
Yep.
The destruction of your town and your family is a cause to tear your clothes. I mean, just Lamentations it's heartbreaking because he's describing God judging them.
Yeah.
We are under judgment. That judgment is going to continue. By God's grace, we want repentance. And hey, how about a good spot to begin repentance from our lack of natural affection, our lack of love for our people? How about not electing the Indian African American woman to be our president?
Right.
How about that starting as a repentance? Not that all of it. It's not just Trump winning. Like, there it is. We repented. No, how about just even the start?
Right.
Well, let's maybe have some affection for a good man who can rule semi-justly.
Yep.
White pill?
Okay, here's the white pill. It's really simple, but I'm telling you, it's true, and you should really feel the weight of this, because it is a big deal and it is encouraging. The white pill is that I can't promise that Trump will be elected, but I think that we can take heart that it is far, far more likely that he will live up until the election. Why? Because the last time Trump mopped the floor with someone in a debate, there was an assassination attempt that shortly followed.
Right.
And I know I'm being a little facetious here, but I'm deathly serious. If Trump had done really well in that debate, and he didn't, I'm not saying he did horrible, but he did not do really well.
Right.
He didn't. I wish he did. He didn't. But if he had done really well and mopped the floor with Kamala Harris, I absolutely believe there would be another assassination attempt.
Yeah.
I think, for the Democrats, for the deep state, right? Plan A, debate. When that fails, Plan B, bullet.
Yeah.
They've already done it once.
Right.
It's not hyperbole. It's literally what happened. And we know that there was another shooter.
Right.
We and the FBI. We can't still have just memory hold it.
Yep.
Didn't even come up, and in the debate, it's only been a couple months that a former president of the United States almost died. His ear was shot.
Yeah.
And so, that's all that is deep state. Not even saying that the shooter was on the payroll or this or that. Maybe not. I don't know. But absolutely, at bare minimum, it is absolutely the fault of the deep state. I think an intentional neglect and incompetence with the Secret Service.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So yes. So when Trump won against Biden handedly, then the next plan was let's try to kill him. And so with this,
They were about 2 inches away.
yeah, and they were about
Less
2
than
inches
that.
less than that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, and so that's my white pill. Is
Okay.
That I think because Trump didn't perform super well in the debate, I think he has a little bit more life insurance.
Charles Haywood, he has a prediction, and he's made a couple good ones. He's been a guest in the show. I think a really astute observer. He says, come hell or high water, Trump is going to get elected. But after that, all hell is going to break loose. Like, they are pulling out every stop. This guy can't get back in power. His administration was a little bit sidelined the first time. It is not going to be that way this time. They're pulling out every stop they have. It's not going to work. And he says, that's the moment then. Be it a coup, be it revolution, be it violence in the streets. That's when the last plug gets pulled. We can't let him get into power. I would have a couple weeks of food on hand come November. Have a plan. Men, you should own a gun. Just be aware that when violent people are cornered and it really looks like their time is up, the animal gets violent and it lashes out. And we really could see that. I pray to God not. I pray that he wins. It's a peaceful transfer and we get to work rebuilding this nation. But rougher times could be ahead. We don't get to be as disobedient and wicked as we have been corporately as a nation and not experience the painful steps of repentance.
That's right.
Amen.
Yeah.
Real quick, we've got an ignorant normie in the chat. Nathan, scroll up a little bit. So this is right there. American Wasp with Dieter McBusiness. He says, Confederate Christians justify their narcissism through victimhood. By the way, the shooter was a registered Republican. Do you guys want to respond to that? He was a registered Republican. Andrew Torba, who's the CEO of Gab and a personal friend, found his account, the shooter, found his account on
He had a Gab account?
Yep. And released it to the FBI because it was asked for. It was either the FBI
To be destroyed,
or
probably.
CIA. But then also showed some of the screenshots to the public.
Right.
And the guy was a flaming progressive liberal. So the fact that he registered as a Republican was a cover. He had also made a donation. It was small because he's a loser and probably didn't have a job and was poor, but he made a donation to Act Blue, which is not Republican. It's 100% liberal, progressive, Democrat. And the guy was a part of like all of his tweets were about how happy he was that Biden was elected and leading up to the 2020 election, how Trump can't win and blah, blah, blah. And the guy is a Democrat.
Right.
If he registered as a Republican, then, he did it so that American Wasp with Dieter McBusiness, could be deceived. So congratulations. You were fooled by a guy who was so foolish that he missed the president
and has brains blown out.
I could tell he was a progressive because he was like 140 pounds soaking wet. The physiognomy checked out. Like I saw one screenshot and I was like, this man is no Republican.
Right. Yeah.
No red meat eating.
That's true.
Barbell lifting.
That is absolutely true. You start voting Republican if you're a man and you reach a certain age, or if you're a man and you bench a certain weight. That's just the way. Even Shane Gills, who is not a Christian, not conservative, but even he said, he was like, he had a bit, he's a comedian, and said, you think your dad just graduated high school, and decided to become a prick? It's like, no. He said, republicanism takes time. Yeah. He's like, and it where it starts? Starts with a fascination with history. He's like, I was going through the George Washington, museum, and he's like, and I felt it. He was like, it's just creeping up. It's like, I love America. I love the founders. I'm like, you can't tax me without. He's like, and then and then they took me, to the slave quarters for George Washington. He's like, he's like, and all of a sudden the republicanism started dying out, inside of me, and he's like, but then they finished off the tour by showing me his wooden teeth or something like that, and then showed me one other painting. He was like, we're back. He's like, so he's like, You don't just graduate. It's not like your dad graduated high school and decided to become a prick, all in an afternoon. Republicanism takes time. It takes either eating red meat and working out, or it takes being old enough. Who's the guy who said, it's attributed to a bunch of guys, but Thomas Jefferson, others, if you're not a liberal when you're young, then you don't have a heart.
Yep.
And if you're not a conservative when you're old, then you don't have a brain.
Yeah.
And what is his name? Wasp, Dieter, business. Friend, you do not have a brain. All right, that'll do it for us. And we hope to see you again next week. We've got the Friday special. Do we have another episode coming out, Nate? Nope. Friday special, go catch up. They're all out. They're all available. And we will see you on Monday with a Theology Applied interview. And then the three of us will see you for the live stream again, Lord willing, next week on Wednesday.